All right, guys, before I give you a sample lesson from the Advanced Level 2 program, I do want to cover two common emails that I've been getting from you guys, which is one, if you've been following it, is what happened with that lawsuit with Chuck Quinton of Rotary Swing, as well as what's up with the other coaches on your program, as well as why you're offering this course for free. And so, diving right in, Chuck Quinton, started attacking me right the day that COVID struck last year, calling me a fraud and all these other pieces. But what was interesting is that he actually dropped the suit the moment that a federal judge in Colorado ruled that he obfuscates the origins of Rotary Swing Tour, naming my mentor, Allison TG, as where he took all of his information from. And so what's been so overwhelming in this process, not only has this been a shock to me and my family, but also really surprising in terms of this track record of going after people, in the online space, not just, in terms of threatening legal action, but also him taking content from other instructors. I mean, I had a, great chat with Chris O'Connell of Plain Truth Golf, who works with Jim Hardy, who of course founded the one plane versus two plane concept. And back as I think 2004, 2005, somewhere in that stretch, Chuck Quinton had watched Jim Hardy's content on the Golf Channel, purchased the website oneplanegolfswing.com or some iteration of that, and started teaching the one plane versus two plane concept. And when Chuck was called out by Jim Hardy as well as Peter Jacobson for what he was doing, he first of all said that he had every right to do it. And secondly, once he was backed in the corner, he offered to sell the website back to them for something like $100,000 to $150,000. And so, again, it's been super overwhelming to get support from you guys basically saying, what this guy has done in the industry is not correct. He's been the aggressor on multiple instances. And thank goodness, Eric, that somebody went ahead and they stood up to him. And so, again, the other instructors on our program, again, it's important for me to, go ahead and keep on innovating and updating Access Golf for you guys to make it really a wonderful place for you to learn about the golf swing. Because again, a silver lining behind this lawsuit is actually getting, Allison to reemerge in the marketplace. Again, she says to me, Eric, if it wasn't for the suit, then she would have never come back out. And so to be able to feature who's one of the brightest minds in instruction is really special for me. And I feel really, in hindsight, like this has been a blessing in disguise. And even though going through the process was, very expensive, very time consuming, very stressful, looking back, I think it's an awesome thing that happened because not only did it, kind of set a precedent in terms of what this guy has done in other aspects of this industry. But again, it leads us to the final point, which is what you guys have been asking me, which is, Eric, why are you offering these programs available for free? And so, really the biggest thing behind this all is saying that fundamentals should be free. In the same way that you go to a gym, you don't have a personal trainer that says, I have some secret series of exercises that you don't know anything about. I feel like everyone should understand the basic workings of a golf swing. And that's where, again, adding these other coaches, we're going to add new layers of understanding in our level 2 program. If you want to dive in deeper with us, that's great. But the basic fundamentals, especially considering what's going on in the world with the global health crisis and how golf has really been a rare reprieve for a lot of people to get out of the house in terms of returning something back to normal. And so by giving away these fundamentals for free is our way of giving back. And so, again, looking back, in terms of this court case, was an extremely stressful period in my life, extremely financially stressful. Took us a lot of money and a lot of, hours to go ahead and fight this guy. Got to the point where, he was actually, he had a series of different lawsuits against me. It was one of those things that just didn't stop. When we posted our website, Rotary Truth, which talks about the background of, what actually transpired in the case and how he sent, an email to 300,000 people on his, on his supposed list that I was a fraud and I lied about my father having Parkinson's. These are things that cause a lot of strain. But even in posting that site, he filed an injunction and a restraining order against me to try to get me silenced and get Allison silenced. And so when she came forward to testify against him, Chuck sued her too. Which, again, it absolutely blows my mind, this behavior, but I feel really, really relieved in hindsight that we've been able to, basically put this aggressor at bay. So again, didn't want to spend too much time talking about it. I know it's, for me, kind of upsetting, but again, I did get a lot of emails from you. Did want to get you up to speed. I did include a link to the court case below where, again, the judge did rule that he obfuscates the origins of his teaching method, which, again, for us was felt like a really big win. But again, I want to give you a sample lesson of our advanced program. So again, sorry for taking too much of your time, but I did want to go ahead and clear the air on a couple questions I've been getting lately. And again, I appreciate your support, and I look forward to making Access Golf really a preeminent platform by which, I'm giving Allison a chance to get her word out, as well as a whole bunch of other really impressive coaches. I know they're going to absolutely blow your mind. So again, thanks for checking us out, and look forward to having you dive deeper with us.
All right, guys, homework time. This is day 1 advanced drills talking about the primary tilt. So what we're going to go through today is not just a drill to help you rewire these motor patterns. That way, when you go to the golf course, you will automatically get into a better posture and improve the way you compress your irons. But we're also going to talk about the nuances. In other words, what are the differences at play between the primary tilt when we hit a wedge versus a 3-wood, because we want to understand that, again, the posture fundamentals for every club in the bag are the same, but there certainly are nuances that are there. And contributing that to is the conversation, what Bryson DeChambeau has done regarding his single length set of clubs, if he in fact is even doing that. So what we're going to talk about, first of all, is going through how the brain learns. We're going to talk about the exact stance width, the exact drills, as well as the different hinges that we need based on different clubs in our bag, as well as the position of our hands relative to our shoulders. Do we want to be out here? Do we want to be in here? We're going to go through all of that over the course of the advanced drill program today. And so diving right in, when we talk about stance width, we're really referencing the hips, not the outside of the thighs. Now, the reason why is some people have a little bit more cushion out here, whereby if we simply plumb up a club on the outside part of the thigh, we might be a little bit wider than what we're looking for. And of course, what we said was if we get too wide with our stance width, we're not going to have room to get our weight back to our lead side. We're going to end up hanging back, leading to some bad shots from there. And so what I want you to do is I want you to kind of feel around for the outside of your hips. So kind of the bone right there. And from here, I just want you to go ahead and drop a club. We're going to put a tee here and put a tee right there, because this is as wide as your stance width should be for every club in the bag, whether it be a full swing sandwich or a full swing driver, that stays constant. When it comes to ball position, what we said was the bottom of your swing arc is going to occur opposite your lead shoulder, point of furthest extension from the body. And so, of course, this is where what we would say is the deepest part of your divot. That's not where the ball should be, however. We want actually the front of the golf ball in line with that. So therefore, the ball position will be slightly back of that. So about an inch to inch and a half forward of center. That way, we're still compressing the golf ball. A driver, of course, is a specialty club. We will be moving the ball position as far forward from this spot as a tee is high. That way, we're optimizing the launch conditions as well as the angle of attack. And so, step 1, proper stance width, proportion to the hips. Again, what we learned from Allison TG and her anatomical absolutes is based upon the fact that she talks about having your feet 2 inches outside of what's a neutral joint position. What I saw with people with Parkinson's is just that rough plumb bob of the outside of the thighs, but be super exact. It's actually the hip bones right here, instep of the feet, instep of the feet. Next thing we're going to talk about is this whole idea of hinging and how much we want to hinge. So what we alluded to is we want to get the weight over the ankles by virtue of tilting my upper body back, keep my spine neutral, weight over the ankles. So in truth, you don't have to hinge your thighs back to get the weight over the ankles. If I'm standing up in a neutral position, you could plumb a line, ear, shoulder, hip, knee, ankle. This is a neutral position with my weight over the ankles. While I hinge my thighs back, I need to, in proportion, allow my upper body to hinge forward. So again, if I were to grab a putter, the hinge I would need for a putter is far deeper than what I'd want for a 3-wood. So part of the reason why is if I hinge too deep for a 3-wood, I'm going to end up hitting everything heavy, and the lie angle of the shaft is no longer going to match up to the lying angle of my spine. So what I mean by that is the toe of the club is going to be well up. My hands are going to be much too dropped. And so what we're going to have you do is, again, tomorrow we're going to talk about the position of the shoulder blades in the advanced course, how it's slightly different for putting than it is for full swing. But talking about the primary tilt, what we're going to have you do is we're going to have you grab a club, get into neutral with our spine angle, slightly engage the abs just a little bit. And so from here, we're going to hinge your thighs back, not until the toes come up necessarily, but until the club hits the ground, and then we're going to add some flex there. And what you're going to notice, if I did the exact same thing with a 3-wood, from here, if I hinge the thighs back, I don't have to hinge quite as deeply for me to go ahead and make contact with the ground. And so these are things that are really important when it comes to fitting, because the club fit should be based upon the fact that this club is at a 90-degree relationship to my spine angle. Hinge the thighs back, flex. With this club, we're going to hinge the thighs back and flex. So what we're going to do in terms of how we're going to reprogram the brain to get into this position, it's important to understand that, people talk about muscle memory ad nauseum. There's no such thing. I get the heebie-jeebies when I hear that because there's no such thing as muscle memory. Everything is a motor pattern that we acquire in the brain. And so when it comes to this idea, it takes roughly 120 repetitions for us to rebuild a new neural pattern. That way we can incorporate within our round of golf the very next day. And so this 120 number is not some arbitrary number. A lot of neuroscientists have developed this. And again, it's the minimum number of viable reps for us to go ahead and rewire a new neural pathway in the brain. So what we're going to do is as follows. We're going to grab a wedge. We're going to start off, we're going to go 10 times here, hinge. Do this in front of a mirror, making sure you're not tilting upper body back, making sure you're not bending forward. We're going to hinge back, toes come up slightly, add flex. We're going to do this 10 times, and we're actually going to grab 10 clubs out of our bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our wedge. Once we've done that primary tilt 10 times, we're going to grab a club. Spine's in neutral. We're going to hinge until the club hits the ground. At which point we're going to go 9 times with our hinge. And we're going to grab not a lob wedge, but we're going to grab our sand wedge. And we're going to go here. And I want you to learn that the degree of hinge is going to be slightly less as the clubs get longer. So from here, we're going to grab a gap wedge or a pitching wedge. We're going to go 8 times without a club. Sorry. Eight times with a club. Thighs back, flex. Thighs back, flex. Thighs back, flex. What we're looking for here is not necessarily the knee directly over the ankle, but the back of the knee over the ankle. Because again, if we're hinging back and not adding enough flex, we're too far back, we might have a tendency of falling backwards as well. And again, when we say we want the weight over the ankles, we're not referencing the fact that we want 100% of our weight back there, just 60% more of our weight back over the ankles. The cool thing about this, what we see in terms of even weight shift patterns within my players on tour, is the old weight shift patterns in the full swing have been ball, heel, ball, heel. For a guy like Bernhardt, who's now 60% over his ankles, we'll talk about this in 2 days when we talk about pressure shifting, his weight shift patterns are completely linear. He's going heel, 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 heel. Therefore, he's exerting energy literally right down his target line. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to a 9 iron. We're going to go 7 times in our tilt. We're going to grab a club. We're going to go 7 times. You can probably already start to see and feel how we're not getting quite as deep. From here, we're going to go grab the next club, 8 iron. We're going to go 6 times, hinge. Okay. We're going to go 6 times with a club. Club is pointing right at our navel, shoulders down, spine's in neutral, hinge, flex, hinge, flex, hinge, flex. Now with all of these, what I want you to notice is my pinky is right underneath my shoulder. So the right hand will be a little bit more on top. That's okay. Because again, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily want to have my hands directly under my shoulders, especially as we move into driver, because then the lie angle of the club is going to be, the toe's going to be well off the ground, and that's going to be extremely uncomfortable, and the ball, quite frankly, is going to be sent left very often if we're here. So again, with a driver, before we continue the drill, we're going to be here and there, and because of the lie angle of the club, my left pinky is still underneath my shoulder, but because the club is flatter, my right hand might appear to be reaching forward a little bit, and that's okay, especially with driver, because tomorrow we're going to talk about this, the role of secondary tilt, hitting more up on the ball, that will mitigate a lot of that issue. So again, we're on 5 times. I'm going to grab 7 iron. We're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we're going to go 5 times here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to grab 6 iron. We're going to go 4 hinges, flex, hinge, 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 flex. And what we're going to talk about in a second is what about the idea of single length clubs? Because yes, based upon the hinge, the primary tilt will change a little bit, but the fundamentals themselves are the same. Okay, there's 3 times here. We're going to go grab 4-iron. We're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's where I certainly would not want to grab a hybrid or a 3-wood and get into the same tilt I had with the wedge. Because then from here, the toe would be well off the ground. I'd end up hitting a lot of hooks from this position. The same way I would not want to be too upright when hitting a lob wedge or a sand wedge. And so when it comes to this whole idea, and then of course we're going to go one more time here. Now this whole sequence of the drill, just to explain it real quick, is we've done 10 without a club, 10 with a club, 9 without a club, 9 with a club, 8, 8, 7, 7, 6, 6, 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. And so what this, of course, is essentially is 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 down to 1. That number equals 55. 55 plus 55 equals 110 because we've done that same rep series with a club. And so what I want you to do now is I want you to make one swing with each club. We're going to stand up straight, shoulders down, hinge the thighs back until the club hits the ground. We're going to make a swing from there. We're going to work through every club, getting that same sensation, the weight over the ankles. Again, not leaning back, not bending forward, hinging the thighs back, adding flex. So we're going to have you now make one swing with every club, working on this whole idea of tilting until the toes come up, adding some flex, but also until the club hits the ground. When it comes to 2 important questions that I get regarding lie angle as well as what about single length clubs. And I'll say, okay, let's talk about Bryson real quick because I think in his bag he has 5 clubs that are the same length. Maybe 6. You know, his driver is definitely crazy long. He is an odd putter. His wedges are definitely shorter. But when it comes to, you know, the way that manufacturers have built clubs, if I said, okay, I hit my 7-iron best in my bag, it might be because my 7-iron I have not just the right stance with, but also it's a tilt that's appropriate given the length of the shaft. And so if I said to somebody, okay, I'm going to take my 7-iron and I'm going to cut every club down to a 7-iron length. My hybrid is going to go far shorter and my wedges are going to go far longer, so the gapping is going to get thrown off there. So how do we go ahead and counteract that? So we have force equals mass times acceleration. And so in the past, club manufacturers have changed the length of the shaft to go ahead and change the force by changing the acceleration. Every club goes a little bit faster as the club gets longer. And so if the acceleration of every club is the same, if the speed of every club is the same, what you then have to change is the mass of each club, which becomes a club fitter's nightmare. In other words, if your 4-iron is cut down, the way that you make up for the lack of force is by making the club heavier. And so imagine this, that you're having a 4-iron that feels heavier than your 7-iron, and that's what Bryson is dealing with, which is why, of course, this throws off the flex point of the shaft, the frequency, the swing weights. His spin numbers go through the roof unless he had a club fitter literally on site handy. And so that being said, you know, even though he certainly feels like he's mitigating a variable of literally the 1 or 2 degrees of change in terms of spine angle based on different clubs, he's changing that variable for the sake of changing 6 different variables of the club fitting process. So again, if you want to go down that route, you certainly can. I have nothing against it. It makes a lot of sense, but also you want to be sure that you have a club fitter that knows what they're doing because again, you don't want to end up having, you know, a pitching wedge that's really, really light because the shaft is longer to take some distance off it to create the proper gapping. The other thing that I want you to take a look at when you're going through the club fitter conversation is when you hinge, again, the toe of the club should be slightly off the ground just a little bit. Part of the reason why is there's what's called shaft deflection, which is when you swing, the shaft actually bends down a little bit, which is where if you are getting fit, I would definitely recommend a dynamic fitting, which is when you're making golf swings versus just a static fitting. That being said, when we're playing off of different lies and conditions, there's a reason why, you know, you've preferred in the past a ball being slightly above your feet versus below your feet. It has to do with the fact that if the ball is above your feet, your slope is like this, it's forcing more weight back over the heels. whereby people do not necessarily like a ball that's beneath their feet because it actually forces you to hinge deeper, more weight over the ankles to get down. And of course, we don't want to choke down, whereby a ball above your feet, you simply just want to choke down a little bit. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about in terms of club fitting is you might feel like by getting to this posture, this position, the toe is too much off the ground, and it might be the fault of the club manufacturers. And I want you to imagine something real quick. I'm going to come up a little bit closer. If you go ahead and you take a look, this would be a club that's sitting flat on the ground. That would be toe up here, toe down. If you hit a ball a little bit heavy, do you think you're going to sell more clubs if you hit the ball long left or short right? And of course, the answer is going to be you're going to sell a lot more clubs if the misses that somebody hits when they're testing the clubs go long left. So if the line goes a little bit toe up right and the club toe is up, heel is going to dig if you hit the ball heavy. It's going to cause face to close, and the ball is going to end up going a little bit longer, but to the left. Whereby if a club is, not flat enough, too upright, the toe is going to dig first. It's going to lead the face to be open, more aloft. The ball is going to be missed short right. So again, it's one of those things where if you do happen to get into a better posture and you still notice the clubs are a little bit toe up, that's okay. You can certainly get that bent and adjusted, but just know that it's certainly been a tool that club manufacturers have used to sell more golf clubs to begin with, which is making clubs that are not quite flat enough based on the consumer. But again, getting that bent is super important. But I would not want you to try to get your hands in a position to get the club sitting flat as opposed to getting your body in the right position to produce and engage more powerful muscles that facilitate exactly what you're trying to do over the course of the golf swing. So tomorrow what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the driver, the secondary tilt, the spine. But just to recap today, we've gone through the primary tilt. We've talked about the nuances of stance width, how we want to keep the same stance width for every club in the bag, the nuances, how deep of a primary tilt that we want, the conversation of single length clubs. And again, the only other thing I can think of is, the conversation of stance width is super important. I've had a couple players on tour where they'll be hitting their driver really, really great. And one time I got a call from a player saying, Eric, I cannot hit my 7-iron to save my life. My swing looks completely different with 7-iron. I said, okay, send me what you think. And he said, okay, I think I get more inside with the 7. I think I get more across the line. I said, okay. The first thing that I had to assume, which turned out to be correct, is this player was narrowing up their stance width as the clubs got shorter. And so again, he had an appropriate stance width when it comes to hitting driver, longer clubs, but 7-iron, he looked like this. His feet were actually right underneath his pelvis. And so that player, there would be very little ability to shift your weight, shift your pressure. The lower body would rotate first, move back. That, of course, would cause the club to go more inside. And so it's really cool the fact that I was consulting with him as well as another coach on tour. The other coach was like, okay, you need to elevate more. You need to get the club a little bit higher. And I said, no, this is happening as a result of the stance width being too narrow. And by simply widening up the stance, the club stayed more in front of him because there's less over-rotation to the lower body. And that's what I want to really talk about over the course of this program, which is, yes, there's a lot of aesthetics in the golf swing. There's a lot of things that we see, over the top or coming out of posture, casting the club. If we can identify what is the root cause of why you're doing it, we can catalyze a lifetime of change starting today. And again, don't forget to go ahead and sign up for our Swing Genome Project Facebook page. That way you can catch me going live. Our other Axis Golf coaches upload a video of your swing. That way we can personally critique it. There's so many benefits to membership on top of the over 250 video lesson programs that cover every other aspect of the game, from short game to full swing to ball striking to trajectory control. We go through literally everything in this course. We actually have a brand new instructor, Casey Cox, who's a 2-time PGA Teacher of the Year, who developed a breathing technique that actually the only player on tour that utilizes it right now is Bryson DeChambeau, where he is going through and talking about how different ways you breathe into your lungs will improve how you transfer energy into the back of the golf ball. And of course, we have Allison Teegee, who is the founder of the anatomical collapse suits and one of the greatest minds in golf as we know it. And so to have her part of this program is really incredible. And I cannot thank you enough for your interest in what I do on my side. And I just want to continue building a wonderful program for you, because I know if I can help transform your game, my goal in this 7-day course is not just to help you improve, get rid of that one swing fault you might have had your entire life, but I really want to be the guy that all your golfing buddies hate this season. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. And again, thank you so much.